final stretch.
Folks, it's go time.
This election is a simple choice.
There's such a stark, fundamental difference.
President Trump pleading from behind.
Can I ask you to do me a favor? Suburban women, will you please like me? Please. I saved your damn neighborhood, okay?
Drawing fire from Joe Biden.
He's still living in a dream world.
Facing voters in dueling town halls.
I knew it was a big threat. At the same time, I don't want to panic this country.
Americans don't panic. He panicked.
At least 26 million ballots already cast 16 days before the final votes in an election shaped by a global pandemic.
We have a baseline of daily infections at approximately 50,000 per day.
Racial unrest, economic crisis.
Their needs are not addressed in the president's proposal.
Getting something done before the election and executing on that would be difficult.
And a last-minute confirmation for the Supreme Court.
We're confirming the judge in an election year after the voting has occurred.
Health care coverage for millions of Americans is at stake.
We covered all this morning with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel, a closer look at battleground Florida, plus insight and analysis from our Powerhouse Roundtable.
From ABC News, it's This Week. Here now, Chief Anchor George Stephanopoulos.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. 2 weeks and 2 days to go in this race for the White House, and President Trump, down in the polls, facing persistent unemployment, a new surge in COVID cases, is barnstorming the country to rally his troops, repeating his favorite lines. Late last night in Wisconsin, which set new coronavirus records on Thursday and Friday, he insisted we're rounding the corner on the pandemic. Just hours after laying into Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, the target of a domestic terror plot revealed just last week.
Then I guess they said she was threatened. Right? She was threatened. And she blamed me. You got to get your governor to open up your state, okay? And get your schools open. Get your schools open. The schools have to be open, right? Lock them all up.
And that's where we begin with our first guest, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Madam Speaker, thank you for joining us this morning. I want to get to the latest on the stimulus negotiations with the White House. But first, your reaction to that new salvo from President Trump last night. Governor Whitmer said this: "This is exactly the kind of rhetoric that has put me, my family, and the lives of other government officials in danger."
No. The president has to realize that the words of the President of the United States weigh a ton. And in our political dialogue, to inject fear tactics into it, especially a woman governor and her family, is so irresponsible. And in all fairness to people who listen to him, people think the president is important and what he says should be adhered to. And so we have this horrible situation. But the people have awakened to him. 26 million people already voting. The biggest antidote to his poison is the vote.
A lot of Americans are hurting, as you know, as well, Madam Speaker. I know you've been negotiating with the White House over a possible economic relief package, and you spoke with Secretary Mnuchin last night.
Yes.
Any closer to reaching a deal?
Well, we're seeking clarity because actually, with all due respect to some of the people in the president's administration, they're not legislators. So when they said we're accepting the language on testing, for example, but we're just making a light touch. They said they changed shall to may, requirements to recommendations, a plan to a strategy, not a strategic plan. They took out 55% of the language that we had there for testing and tracing. And the tracing part is so important because communities of color have been disproportionately affected by this. So on this subject where we have agreement, we don't have agreement in the language yet, but I'm hopeful. And here's the big difference. Communities of color have more deaths than the white population. Let's just think of this. If you are a child, a Hispanic child has 8 times more chance of going to the hospital with COVID than a white child. A black child, 5 times more chance of going to the hospital than that. That's because we have not addressed the problem, the testing, the tracing, the treatment, the mask wearing, the separation, the sanitation, and all that goes with it. So again, hopefully that we can learn from each other and they understand. And let me just say this. We had pages and pages of how you would do this in the minority community. They crossed it all out. Instead, they put this sentence. Contact tracing will be paid for by the federal government as part of the $75 billion. Okay, we agree with that. But given state difference, each state shall establish a strategy that is appropriate to its circumstances. CDC can provide guidance to the states on elements. Can, no, must. But in addition to that, we have to have a national plan. You cannot leave it up to the states
so if you don't,
how they're going to address the minority community.
If you don't get that agreement, if you don't get that agreement in the 48-hour deadline you said, what happens?
Well, here's the thing. The 48 only relates to if we want to get it done before the election, which we do.
Well, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah, so which we do. But we're saying to them, we have to freeze the design on some of these things. Are we going with it or not? And what is the language? I'm optimistic because, again, we've been back and forth on all of this. You know legislation. Shall is different from may. And the difference amounts to this. If you think of it this simple way, when you say may, you're giving the president a slush fund. He may do this, he may grant, he may withhold. When you say shall, according to the scientific, the science tell us must happen. And if we test and trace and treat, mask, separate, ventilate, sanitize, and all the rest of that, we can open our schools.
But
we
Madam
can
Speaker,
open our businesses.
Even if you reach a deal with the White House somewhere around $1.82 trillion, Leader McConnell has said he's not going to put something like that on the floor of the Senate. So what happens?
Well, he said a number of things. And one of the things that he said, I think it was yesterday, but it was reported yesterday, that is if the White House and the House come to an agreement that he would put it on the floor. That is among his many statements. But most of the time he spends laughing, pushing the pause button, telling states to go bankrupt, laughing when in his debate, did you see that, when Amy McGrath was saying to him, what are you doing about stopping the spread of the virus, et cetera? He laughed. He laughed. This is not funny. The president didn't take it seriously. McConnell has not taken it seriously. But we can stop this if we follow the science and be ready for a vaccine, which I hope will be soon.
You haven't spoken to the president in over a year. Are you willing to pick up the phone to close a deal, to get this done?
Look, let me just say this, because I keep getting that question. It isn't about the president. He sends his representative. President Bush sent his representative. President Obama sent their representative. Professionals who know something about the policy. This is not unusual. However, I have a great deal of respect for the office I hold, Speaker of the House, and I have a great deal of respect for the position that he holds, President of the United States. This is not a casual conversation. This is about a meeting of the head of the first branch of government, the legislative branch, and the president. If there is a purpose, if there is a stipulation of trying to get something done, then perhaps we take this to that place when we can't solve other problems. But many of you have spent many times calculating how many times the president has misrepresented the facts, how many times the president has told me and told Chuck Schumer that, yes, we're going to do this for Dreamers, or told bipartisan, bicameral representatives in the Congress, yes, we're going to do this on immigration, told us, yes, we're going to do this on infrastructure, but then he doesn't. So again, you want to meet with him? You meet with him. But as far as I'm concerned, the Speaker of the House must be respected in terms of what the purpose of the meeting is, what the preparation is for it, and what the likely outcome of success would be.
Bottom line, Madam Speaker, are Americans going to get relief before Election Day?
Well, that depends on the administration. The fact is that we cannot, the heart of the matter is to stop the spread of the virus. Now, let me speak to you from the standpoint of children, because that is my why. That is why I am in government and politics. For the children, we're having a big debate with them now over earned income tax credit. They get a tax break to the richest people in America. We want a earned income tax credit, child tax credit, child independent tax credit for the children. 6 to 8 million, depending on whose calculation you use, million kids are now, people are in poverty in our country. And many of them are children. So this will take millions of children out of poverty, send them to schools that take money to have the separation, the ventilation of the number of teachers there to teach them, have correct this coronavirus that is affecting Black and Hispanic children in a much greater way than white kids. And that takes us all back to state and local government, which is the source of health care, education, first responders, police and fire, food, sanitation, and the rest. There's a oneness to this. I think we can get there. But if you think of it in terms of the children and childcare, they're rejecting our number on childcare, which is greatly reduced, but they're rejecting it, saying childcare is people can't go to work if their children can't go to school.
Finally, Madam Speaker, I do have to move on, but I just want to ask you one final question about Judge Amy Coney Barrett. Last time we spoke, you said Democrats had arrows in their quiver to block this nomination, but she seems like she's on a path to confirmation right now. Is this a done deal, or is there still something Democrats can do to stop it?
Well, we'll see. I'm not in the Senate. I don't. What I'm talking about is how we win this election, because we have to offset whatever the outcome of this, whatever this court may do. And the Congress of the United States can overturn these bad decisions. For example, the court just did one on the census. The census is a disagreement we have in this bill. This is very important, who we are as a nation. And yet the court just agreed with the president to stop the census. So again, because we want to have an agreement, we can come to negotiation. And we can do it now. What's the difference, a few days, except that we could have it before the election, which we want it as soon as possible. And I certainly want it, because I don't want to have to be sweeping up after this dumpings of this elephant as we go into a new presidency in a few short months.
Madam Speaker, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you. My pleasure. Good morning to you. Stay safe.
And we're now joined by the chair of the Republican National Committee, Ronna McDaniel. Ronna, thank you for joining us this morning. First off, I know you've been battling COVID. How are you feeling?
Feeling great. I was sick. I have asthma, and I was on a steroid, and I've really come out of it quickly and on the campaign trail and feeling great. Thank you for asking.
And, Governor Chris Christie's one of our contributors now. He's coming up on the program as well. He's also battled COVID and said he came out thinking that he was wrong not to wear a mask in the White House. What lesson have you taken away from all this?
I think it's an incredibly contagious disease. I think people are getting sick and they don't even know where. And I think the president, with what he's done with the warp speed vaccines, the testing, these are going to be the things that are going to get us out of this pandemic. And the president taking that swift action early on is putting our country in a better place to fight this terrible virus.
Of course, you are from Michigan. You saw the president's rally last night. You just heard Speaker Pelosi. Should the president be talking like that about Governor Whitmer, talking about lock them up, lock them all up, when she's facing threats like this?
Well, first of all, the president and his FBI foiled this plot, and I think Governor Whitmer is really inappropriate to try and lay blame at the president. These were sick individuals. There was no political affiliation. They were attacking the Capitol as well. We're glad she's safe, her family's safe, but again, let's not politicize.
He's saying lock them all up.
Because of her locking down our state. I mean, my kids aren't in school. She has locked us down. Open it up. It's not, let's not take this rhetoric further. Let's not continue to extrapolate things that were not being said. And when people are saying in Michigan, please let us open up, let our kids go back to school, that's what they're talking about. They're not threatening our governor. And she's taking it way too far once again. And well, the president,
but let me just stop you there, though, because
plot with his FBI.
Thank goodness the FBI did foil that plot, no question about that. But one of the things that the governor's staff has pointed out is that every time the president speaks like this, the threats to her go up on social media.
Well, Democrats attack us too. George, and threats go up to us too. I mean, Governor Whitmer, we of course want her to be safe and healthy, but she has locked down our state, and the people of Michigan, when they're saying open up our state, it's from an impassioned place because their businesses are failing, their restaurants are failing, and I will say as a mom of kids in public school who are not back in school, their education is failing right now. Figure it out. And you know, there is a state response. She does have responsibility. She's on the Sunday shows all the time. Actually, why don't you come back to Michigan and fix it for the families that are suffering under your lockdown?
The president has also been getting into debates with his own Republican senators, including Ben Sasse. Here's a phone call that he had, Senator Sasse, with his constituents just this week.
It isn't just that he fails to lead our allies, it's that the United States now regularly sells out our allies under his leadership. The way he treats women and spends like a drunken sailor, the ways I criticize President Obama for that kind of spending, I've criticized President Trump for as well. He mocks evangelicals behind closed doors. His family has treated the presidency like a business opportunity. He's flirted with white supremacists.
Tough words there, and the president responded on Twitter yesterday morning, a couple of tweets taking on the senator, including this final line: Senator Sasse could be next. Perhaps the Republicans should find a new and more viable candidate. As chair of the Republican National Committee, do you think the Republicans should find a new Senate candidate in Nebraska?
Well, first I'll say everything that Ben Sasse said in that recording does not resemble the president that has led our country out of this pandemic. He's led us to a great economy before this. He's leading us out of it with 11.4 million jobs, created great new trade deals, was at the March for Life the first president to do that. As a woman, the second woman to chair the RNC, let me just tell you the respect he has for women. And the president has unprecedented approval with the Republican Party. Ben's been there for a long time. It's not surprised. It's the only time he gets news is when he criticizes this president. But the party and the energy we're seeing on the ground and the rallies and what we're seeing for this president is unprecedented in terms of the support he's receiving from Republicans across the country.
The president's laying out that maybe Republicans should find a new candidate. Should there be a new candidate in Nebraska?
There's not going to be a new candidate in Nebraska. But, you know, the president, of course, is not pleased to see our candidate attacking him, and I don't blame him for saying that.
He also took on Susan Collins, Maine Senator Susan Collins, in a tweet on Friday, suggesting that she's not worth the work. Is Susan Collins worth the work?
Listen, I want all Republicans to win. I want to keep the Republican majority. I want to reelect the president, and I want to get the House. So we want every Republican to win. And I'll tell you why. Because you have a candidate on the Democrat side right now, Joe Biden, who on your town hall, and continually, after question about whether he's going to upend the third branch of government and burn down our checks and balances, is saying to the American people, I'll tell you what I'm going to do after the election. We need the Senate, we need the presidency, and we need the House, because you have a presidential candidate who refuses to be honest with the American people, even in your town hall.
Yeah, and I did push him on that, and he said he'd come out with... He actually said after a couple of questions that it would be before the election.
Every reporter lets him get a free pass. It is the third branch of government, the judicial branch of government. Stacking the Supreme Court will change our country forever.
I asked him several questions on it.
I want every senator elected. I want every senator elected. I want our president elected. But more than anything, I would love Joe Biden to get a tough question that he actually has to answer.
He did answer it on Thursday, but as RNC chair, are you at all concerned that the president's in kind of open warfare with his own senators?
I think this president is fighting for the American people every day. I'm not worried about Washington Beltway politics. This is a president who went out and said there are forgotten men and women in this country who do not have a voice in Washington, and he's made better trade deals, and he's cut taxes, and he's cut regulation, and he's put great judges on the Supreme Court and across the judiciary. This is a president who has done phenomenal work for the American people. He wasn't there for the Washington elite. And again, you have a candidate who did not answer your question in that town hall, George. Doesn't that concern you, that he is saying, I will fundamentally change the third branch of government, and the American people only deserve to know that after the election? I think that's incredibly alarming.
Again, he did say it before, but you've now got several Republican senators. Lindsey Graham saying he's concerned that Joe Biden is going to win. Tom Tillis saying that you need a Republican Senate to be a check on a potential President Biden. You've seen these comments from Susan Collins and from Ben Sasse. Are you starting to see Republican senators running on a separate track from President Trump?
I'm not. I think all of them have been running those similar races along. Here's what I'm going to tell you. I am seeing more enthusiasm than I saw in 2016. I study the data every day. We know that our voters are going to turn out on election day. They don't trust mail-in balloting as much. They are getting out in these early vote states right now. We want them to get out. We want them to turn in their absentee votes. But we are seeing this huge energy, and we are seeing really great numbers coming out for the president. And this is a race. And any Republican that doesn't recognize that running with the president is going to help them is hurting themselves in the long run.
Finally, your uncle Mitt Romney called out the president for refusing to condemn QAnon, calling this conspiracy theory absurd and dangerous. As head of the Republican Party, are you prepared to condemn QAnon?
You know, I knew you were going to ask me that question. I knew it, because it's something the voters are not even thinking about. It's a fringe group. It's not part of our party. The vice president said I dismiss it out of hand. The president said, you know what, I don't know anything about this group. But of course you're going to ask me about that, because it has absolutely nothing to do with this election.
So do you condemn it?
Antifa is burning down cities right now. I just told you, dismiss them out of hand. They are a fringe group. But this is crazy, George. The American people are worried about this stimulus package that Nancy Pelosi is holding up. Checks going to people who are concerned. And she's saying, you know what, I'm going to look at the fine print. I don't like this one word. And I'm going to hold the American people hostage as I play political gamesmanship with their lives. That's what the voters are worried about.
You've got a series of Senate Republicans saying that package is too large. You've got a series of Senate Republicans saying that package is too large.
There's no package yet, George, because Nancy Pelosi's been holding it up for months. The president has said, get help to the American people. And she is saying, no, not unless we get ballot harvesting in there and we get all these things in there that have nothing to do with getting immediate help to Americans who are struggling right now. This is all on Nancy Pelosi every day, all day. She is hurting the American people for her political well-being, and it is shameful that she is doing this in a time of pandemic. And that's what the American people are worried about right now. Their jobs, the economy, and they know that President Trump is the best candidate to lead them back out of this pandemic because he's already doing it.
Ronna McDaniel, thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
Roundtable's coming up, and Nate Silver is up next, analyzing the surge in early voting.
Don't wait. Vote today. Tell everyone you know. Everyone you meet. Vote. 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 And no matter what, don't let anybody discourage you or tell you your vote won't count, because it does. You, the American people, are going to decide the future of this country. Vote.
The Democrats' push for early votes seems to be bearing fruit. At least 26 million Americans have already voted in more than 40 states, a staggering 20% of the total vote in 2016, more than 2 weeks before Election Day. 538's Nate Silver weighs in on what it may say about the final result.
Breaking news, the election is happening now. More than 25 million people have already voted, either early in person or by mail, and that number will continue to rise between now and Election Day. So far, Democrats have a big edge over Republicans, leading the number of returned mail ballots in states that track party registration, according to the U.S. Elections Project. But remember, this is pretty much what pollsters expected. 63% of Democrats said they plan to vote early, as compared to 35% of Republicans, according to our recent ABC News Washington Post poll. But Republicans could make up for that with a big turnout on November 3rd, since 60% of them plan to cast a ballot on Election Day. That should make the margin a lot closer, though keep in mind that Donald Trump significantly trails Joe Biden in national polls. There are also pluses and minuses to voting by mail. The upside, it's easy and convenient. There's no chance something will come up on Election Day, say your car won't start or you're not feeling well and have to stay home. The downside, a higher percentage of mail-in ballots are rejected because it's easy to make errors, like not having the right witness signature or not putting the ballot in the right envelope, depending on your state's requirements. Overall, though, turnout tends to increase when states implement mail voting, and officials on both sides encourage their voters to do it. So I buy that Republicans should be worried Democrats are locking a lot of votes in, but I wouldn't say they should panic. Odds are that in the end, turnout will be sky high on both sides, perhaps even topping 150 million votes.
Thanks to Nate for that. And now to our series 6 for the win. With 29 electoral votes, Florida could be this year's most consequential battleground. Every plausible path to victory laid out by the Trump campaign requires a win in the Sunshine State. But current polls give Joe Biden a narrow edge. Rachel Scott has this closer look at where things stand right now.
And your hood, the hood. Through Congress and through the House, it's just...
Still hasn't decided who he's voting for. What has you on the fence?
Economics. I mean, simply just taking care of what we have right now. A pandemic is literally turn a switch in my business.
When the pandemic sent the economy tumbling, Thomas was forced to close one of his restaurants in Orlando and lay off 20 members of his staff. And though he says the president is strong on the economy, it's his handling of the pandemic that's giving him pause.
He shoots from the hip, and he creates a frenzy. And then we have the other candidate, Biden, which I think is a good candidate also. But he's pushing for some situations where, for example, $15 an hour, that's a really tough situation to push right now in a bad economy.
There's no bigger prize among the contested states. In the last 6 elections, no candidate has won the White House without winning Florida. And polls show it could be a nail-biter once again. So when President Trump was cleared to resume campaigning after his COVID battle, his first destination, the Sunshine State. We met Margie Santos on her way to his rally in Sanford. At 45 years old, she's voting for the first time, too.
Nobody's perfect. We got to focus on the action and what he's doing for our country.
After losing 3 of her uncles to COVID-19, she's still standing by the president.
I don't live in fear. I'm with the president that, we cannot let it control our lives.
Central Florida is one of the most hotly contested areas of the state and home to one of the largest retirement communities in the country, the Villages. Trump easily won the senior vote here and across Florida the last time, but many are less enthusiastic now because of the way the president has handled the pandemic.
They say they value life, but they don't value elder life. They're not wearing the mask.
The Trump campaign, concerned about the drop in senior support, showed up with some promises this week.
Seniors will be the first in line for the vaccine, and we will soon be ending this pandemic.
In fact, Biden has been leading in many polls among this critical voting bloc.
His handling of this pandemic has been erratic, just like his presidency has been. And it has prevented Florida seniors and people all across the country from getting the relief that they need.
As well as another key group, Hispanics.
About 20-some% of the population is Hispanic.
Dr. Fernando Rivera, a professor at the University of Central Florida, has been tracking Hispanic voting trends in the area for more than 10 years.
It's sort of a purple area, right? So people go back and forward between Democrat and Republican. And I think that the Trump campaign, they don't necessarily need to win the whole percentage of the Puerto Rican vote or the Hispanic vote. They just need enough. And on the other side, Democrats and especially the Biden campaign has to make sure that the turnout is there.
Or Biden.
One of those the Biden campaign is counting on, Maria Baez. She clenches her necklace, the names of the family she left behind in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria, etched in silver. Healthcare for her grandson, who lives with her now, is key, so she's backing Biden.
Lo veo un político que quiere luchar por Estados Unidos, que puede tener unos beneficios tanto médicos y tener una mejor calidad de vida.
In 2016, Trump won the state by just over 100,000 votes. Most agree whoever wins over Central Florida voters now is probably on the fast track to the White House. For This Week, I'm Rachel Scott in Orlando, Florida.
Thanks to Rachel for that. Roundtable's up next. Stay with us.
I think the American people, at least at all the polling shows, very quickly now, that they think the culture, the presidency, the character. Remember, when you vote for an executive, you're voting for the person. Legislator, you're voting for the policy. On the person, they made a decision about the character of Donald Trump, and they want him out.
And, well, that is going to have to be the last word today. Thank you all very much. 2 weeks, 2 days to go. As we said, 26 million Americans have already voted, heading toward a record turnout for 2020.